The Commission of Inquiry into the Usindiso building fire has postponed its investigations, looking into the scourge of hijacked and abandoned buildings here in the city of Johannesburg. A team of inspectors were this week expected to visit those abandoned or hijacked buildings in Fairview, Hillbrow and Berea. Newzroom Afrika's Veronica Makhoali now joins us for more. Veronica, good morning. This really forms part of the second phase of the Commission's investigations. Tell us more about what's been happening.
Well, Iman, we were supposed to be heading out to those areas that you mentioned today to get a look at some of the abandoned or hijacked buildings in those communities. You'd understand that from Fairview, Berea, and as well as Hillbrow, that there are a number of buildings. And altogether, the City of Johannesburg saying about more than 600 of these buildings that have been left dilapidated. And we've been seeing, of course, residents taking up residency in those areas. And the issue, of course, coming from the Commission to try and understand better how essentially prevalent the issue of hijacked buildings and abandoned buildings is in the city. But the Commission started, of course, that work in earnest this week, inspecting some of those buildings, as you've mentioned, as a second part of the inquiry to really understand the living conditions there, how essentially some of these buildings end up being hijacked or abandoned, who they are owned to, the kind of people that take up residency and the living conditions there. And this is, of course, has led to the very abrupt postponement that happened this morning, with the Commission telling us that, of course, this has now had to be postponed because the Social Economic Rights Institute, better known as SERI, has essentially raised some objections in regards to the media being part of this inspection. You would have seen yesterday some of the work taking place where the media was part of the inspection and essentially just showing some of the living conditions there. And you would know the congestion. You would also know that materials used in those hijacked buildings, showing the kind of living conditions, has really raised concerns from SERI, saying that they do not appreciate essentially the media being able to film those residents that are living there. And so the chairperson of the Commission, that being Justice Sisi Gampepa, then ruling right on the spot yesterday that they would then blur the faces of some of the residents and that the media would only be able to film the living conditions should they be given consent. And so essentially SERI saying that this is not satisfactory. They have now, of course, laid a formal complaint with the Commission saying that they will be hearing essentially a formal application on Monday, just to allow SERI, of course, to make its submission on its stance. But as it stands at the moment, the inspection has been paused to allow these arguments to take place and, of course, to get a way forward. You'd also understand that this is a public hearing. The beginning of this commission, of course, started following that devastating fire almost a year ago where 77 people died. And it's raised, of course, an issue around the city of Johannesburg about the prevalence of hijacked and abandoned buildings. You'd also know that I think at this point, Iman, many residents in the city of Johannesburg can point to abandoned buildings and hijacked buildings, not just in the city centre, but it seems to be a growing issue even in residential areas, even in suburbs. And this is why, of course, the Commission is also insisting to make this inquiry public to better get an understanding of how, of course, prevalent this is. And for now, would have to wait until those arguments happen on Monday.
Veronica, thanks for that. You can certainly see it as a result. You talked about the proliferation of those dilapidated, hijacked and abandoned buildings, as a result of this corrosive lack of oversight and management and accountability. Veronica Makhoali there in the Johannesburg CBD.